Ladies and gents, welcome back. Food shortages, the biggest story in the world right now that's not being talked about. Food shortages, of course, are coming, and this is largely due to government policy. And governments around the world are towing these policies of reduction in emissions. And, well, we're going to hear later that food shortages are the cause of climate change. Because, well, that's what the media is going to run. I guarantee it. I'm speculating now, but I'm sure that's the case. But here we go. Canada Proud putting this out there on Twitter. After nearly a decade of attacks on our energy industry, Trudeau is going after his next target, Canadian farmers. Trudeau's proposed fertilizer restrictions will cost Canadian farmers an estimated $48 billion by 2030. Do you think that they'll be able to afford this? No, I think this is by design, just as it is in the Netherlands. Bankrupt these farmers and take their land from them. So what's happening in the Netherlands today? Well, the Netherlands is waking up. This is from Cannibalism, who's over there reporting on it, is waking up to blockaded highways across the country on the A50 near Apeldoorn. Farmers dumped a layer of manure. They had hay bales and other waste on the highway and set it on fire. This is not stopping until the government backs down. We have more from him. North American media isn't showing what is happening in the Netherlands because they don't want their farmers to learn how to protest. We have Eva Vlaardingerbroek. I can never pronounce her name, but she was on Stein's show the other day on GBN, and she had this to say.
Even more so than health, I think controlling the food supply is probably the best way that you control people. If you control when and what they can eat, if you have food shortages, the first thing that comes to mind is that there will be riots. I suppose that the state will then come in and say, we need to prevent those. So we need equal distribution of food. And they never lay the blame with themselves, of course, even though they are the ones that are cutting the cattle farms. They're the ones that are taking our farmers' land away. No, instead, they'll say it's Putin doing this all to us. It's climate change that is causing the crops to go bad. And, by the way, you ordinary man, you civilian, you have to pay for it and you have to give up your rights and you have to eat crickets from now on and you have to stay in your room and you just have to up and say exactly what we want you to say.
Do you think people are going to put up with that? I mean, the thing about politics, you and I have talked about freedom of speech and freedom of religion and freedom of, they can all seem pretty abstract to people unless you're actively involved in political debate. But food is about as basic as it gets. Do you think people are really going to put up with being told you can't have roast beef, you got to eat crickets?
Well, I would say that wars have been started for less, but then again, I don't have a lot of confidence in the ordinary person. As you said, they all gave up their rights in a second when they heard a nice pretext for it during COVID. Well, there, of course, are thinkable, nice pretexts for all of the rights that we're now losing, including if you would lose your foods. If they say it's absolutely necessary for the climate, like what they do now with the farmers, you see that a lot of people, for some reason, just seem to accept that and believe it. But
leave a link in the description down below so you can watch this video in its entirety. But I believe that that's correct, that people will just go along with this as soon as they're given an option of toe the line and eat or don't eat. And, well, eventually you'll toe the line and eat. That's the plan moving forward. The Netherlands roadways have been on fire all day. This is Kian Bexty as well going on about this. Now, former Minister of Agriculture Gerry Ritz was on Tucker Carlson last night, and he had this to say.
Gerry Ritz knows a lot about agriculture in Canada, which is a huge ag producer. He's the former Minister of Agriculture in that country, and we're happy to have him join us tonight. Mr. Ritz, thanks so much for coming on. If Trudeau does this, what will happen to Canadian agriculture?
Well, I think Trudeau's banning fertilizer to that degree because he spreads enough himself. At the end of the day, this is his petulance coming through in response to the trucker convoy that took over his home city for about 3 weeks last winter. And then there's been other trucker rallies in support of what's happening around the world. You mentioned Sri Lanka. We saw what's happening there. These are salt of the earth producers that have been pushed too far. We're seeing the same thing now in Holland, in Italy, and you'll see it in Canada too if he continues down this very dangerous path. As you rightly point out, the border between Canada and the U.S. is just that. We're very synergistic when it comes to food production. We buy a lot of inputs from the U.S., including nitrogen, and we send a lot of product to the U.S. to be processed and then exported to the rest of the world. So this is going to affect that tenuous situation that he's putting us in.
But it's food. I mean, the last world leader to mess with the food supply at scale was Mao Zedong, and he killed tens of millions of people in a famine. Isn't Trudeau worried when you mess with the food supply, you're really messing with a core structure in any society?
Let's not forget just how bad the famines in China were. People were eating feathers out of pillows just in the hopes that they could get some nutrition out of them. And Mao Zedong famously said, and I'm paraphrasing, that it's better to have half the people starve so that half the people can have their bellies full. This is the sentiment of madmen, and these are the people at the helm right now, whether it's the World Economic Forum or it's your local government that gets their orders from such entities. But I'll let this continue playing.
I don't think he realizes the rabbit hole he's gone down and who he's pulling in with him. At the end of the day, Canadian production is already as environmentally friendly as you can possibly get. Can we do more? We always will. At the end of the day, there's no recognition of that environmental stewardship that our farmers already do by cutting the use of fertilizer, by going to timed usage of fertilizer, by going to elements like sulfur and magnesium and copper top dressing fields as they need it. We map our fields every year doing soil samples. There's very little acreage now that is not under the management of agronomy professionals that then take that map, send it up to the cloud, and that then governs where your seeder puts fertilizer and seed down. It governs where your sprayer makes those passes. So we're already as environmentally friendly as we can with today's technology, and there's more to come. We just had a big ag show here in Saskatchewan, Ag in Motion called, and it was about 90% technology, the use of drones and so on. So for him to go to this extent, he is not looking at the big picture at all.
Well, he has no idea where food comes from.
No.
None. And he may soon find out. No. Gerry Ritz, former ag minister in Canada. Thanks so much for coming on.
Well, the more cynical ones of us would look at the situation and say that it's probably by design, that people couldn't be this stupid to do this because it would result in famines around the world. And us in rich countries will have a hard time, but it's the poor countries that are going to get hit the hardest. Have you no heart in this scenario? Now we have here from the counter signal, Ireland debates 30% emissions cap on farmers. So here's another first world country going along with these ridiculous, nonsensical regulations in their agricultural industry. As Dutch farmers continue protesting against crippling Great Reset regulations on the agricultural sector, farmers in Ireland may be the next on the chopping block. The Irish government reportedly wants to cap carbon emissions on the nation's farming industry at 28%, citing environmental requirements set by the European Union. However, some want to set it even more drastic target. And this is the trend going on in the first world countries around the world. And well, even some of the third world countries, I'm not sure what Sri Lanka would fall under, but they just toppled their government because of the policies that they put forward that were brought on by the World Economic Forum, and they bragged about. Here we have the world's largest chemical company announces major cuts to ammonia production. Smart. If you thought food shortages were bad now, you haven't seen anything yet, as the world's largest chemical producer plans to cut production of ammonia, a key ingredient in fertilizers. Headquarters in Germany, of course. Germany, the same place that just shut down all of their nuclear power. in favor of solar and wind, which needs to be supplemented by, of course, natural gas that they get from Russia. And you can't make this stuff up, folks. It's just nonsensical environmental patients, honestly, going after our lifeblood, our food production. Headquarters in Germany, BASF, the world's largest chemical producer, has stated that it plans to cut ammonia production even further to cope with skyrocketing natural gas prices. We are reducing production at facilities that require large volumes of natural gas, such as ammonia plants. BASF CEO Martin Brudermüller said in a media call. For those unaware, ammonia is essential in the production of fertilizers, diesel exhaust fluid, and plastics. Moreover, as noted by Reuters, ammonia production also yields high purity carbon dioxide as a byproduct, which is captured and which is needed by the meat and fizzy drinks industries, though BASF doesn't ship high purity CO2. Now, high purity CO2, where do we use that? Also, we use it in greenhouses. Why? Because it's plant food. Greenhouses, of course, where CO2 gas is pumped in because there's not enough in our natural air into greenhouses to grow tomatoes, cucumbers, or lettuce to boost photosynthesis, resulting in stronger, healthier plants, increased yields, whereas normal air has a carbon dioxide concentration of about 400 parts per million. Most plants fare better in environments with carbon dioxide concentrations of between 600 and 1,000 parts per million, like we used to have millions of years ago before we entered into this, the Pleistocene era of what do you call it? Ice age. We're currently in a ice age, the Pleistocene period. But you will eat your bugs and you will be happy. That's the note that we're getting nowadays from the elites. It's the modern day. They will eat cake. They can eat cake. You know, the old words of Marie Antoinette that just sparked the revolution in France, and where we get the term "heads will roll." But what do we have here now? We have the New York Times coming out with their article. Cannibalism has a time and a place. Some recent books, films, and shows suggest that time is now. Can you stomach it? And I'm not sure what they're trying to get at. I read the article, and they're just going through pop culture and showing how they're normalizing cannibalism. I'm torn between whether this was just clickbait entirely or testing the waters, but it is eerily reminiscent to some pop culture that we all know about. Soylent Green. If you haven't heard of this, well, just go and look it up. I don't have enough time in this video to explain it. But I'm going to leave it there because, well, the world, it's getting crazy. It's getting crazy. But if you haven't stocked up on food, I suggest that you do just that, because things may get hectic in the next year as the feed prices are going up and animals have not yet started being rendered from this last cycle. When the fall comes, prices are going to start really skyrocketing. So I'd suggest people stock up on foods and make sure you protect your own. Anyway, I'll talk to you in the next video. Just keep on trucking.